Sulaiman,
Saadadeen.
how's your week, man?
My week was good, bro. This week, I would say the biggest thing that happened this week was I came to the end of a project that I've been working on for the last 2 months. So for the last 8 weeks, I've been involved with a consulting project linked with a university society. And essentially, we've been consulting with a edtech client based in Asia. And this week, we gave our final presentation to the client, and it felt really good to kind of deliver our final presentation with all of our advice that we had accumulated over the last 8 weeks. And I feel like I've learned a lot from the experience about presenting to a client, like how to use a PowerPoint really effectively, and kind of stakeholder management, making sure that everyone in your team knows what you're doing and you're contributing in the best way possible. So yeah, it was a really nice way to kind of end that project. And another cool thing is I linked up with Ahmed yesterday. So Ahmed is a previous guest on After Work, so it was nice to meet him, get some Turkish food together and chill. But yeah, man, how was your week, bro?
Big up, Ahmed. We ended up doing the bike ride to Cambridge. 6 hours of cycling. I remember halfway through the cycle, me and you were side by side, and it was flat, so the surface was flat, so it was calm cycle, and then some mad hill came up. I remember both of us just going, rah. It was good. It was really well organized by Rahat and Nadir, and it just functioned very smoothly. Like, no one was hurt. Everyone got to Cambridge in one piece. When we got to Cambridge, there was food waiting for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was good. I'll remember it. It was one of those things that at the time when you finish it, you're like, wow, I just cycled from London to Cambridge, and you don't think too much about it. But I think like later down the line, you'll think, okay, like I've cycled from here to there.
Yeah.
So cycling, like even if the train don't work, fam, I can still get to where I need to get to.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was cool, man. That was like one of the highlights of the week, I suppose.
100%. And when you say side by side, you really mean that, because Saadadeen had my back. Behind you. Can't lie. Saadadeen had my back because I was struggling. I can't lie, towards the end, and he carried my rucksack for a lot of the trip. So shout out Saadadeen, man. Rahat and Nadir.
Rahat and Nadir, they hold it down.
Yeah, let's get into our conversation today. Who are we speaking about?
Man. So we spoke to Omar Salha. I remember he came down with his brother and we chilled in a room for a bit. I remember one of the first things you mentioned to me about Omar was that he went Henry Compton, and I was like, what? I was so surprised when you heard that, because that was like one of the, like, most of my friends went to that school. It was very local to me. So yeah, man, that was, I knew from then that was going to be a lit conversation.
100%. Like, so the first time I ever met Omar was a few months before our conversation. He came over to Cambridge to give a talk with the Islamic Society about faith, purpose, action, and just about his experience being the founder of the Ramadan 10 project. So from that day, I knew he was an amazing orator. He was very gifted with his communication skills. So I thought he would be perfect for the podcast, and we ended up having a really, really, really cool conversation with him.
Yeah, so one of the things that stood out to me, and something I've been thinking a lot about, is the ends, where we come from, the background, the home in which we grew up, the area that we call home. And he spoke on this in different parts of the conversation. It was kind of like an underlying theme. He said something about Henry Compton, which is like a notoriously rough school in West London.
Henry Compton. Well, so the uniform was black trousers, black blazer, white shirt, and a navy blue tie. And our sort of emblem on the uniform was a crown and two swords. And it was all boys school. And the second word is Henry Compton school. So it looked like we're going to funeral every day, like start to ward.
He said at one point it was 17% pass rate for GCSEs or something like that. And he said since he left it, it gave him a certain bravado, and he used the line, it's like Frank Sinatra, if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere. And for me, that spoke to me a lot about the ends in general, or coming from a working class background. One of the reasons for that is, I think, like those kind of backgrounds are almost a microcosm of the world. And we came across it in another part of the conversation where he says, I can very happily speak to one person from one part of society and then speak to another person in another part of society in two different registers. And at both times, I'm being completely myself. At no point do I feel like I'm being condescending or not being myself or being fake.
That's why for me, I'm able to actually sit with you in this conversation, in this sort of podcast. I'm probably switching from academic English to more sort of colloquial English, but I'm completely comfortable with that because that's who I am. And I don't have to choose between one or the other.
Definitely.
And I think that, I don't know about you, Sulaiman, but I just feel like sometimes it's like I'm able to like connect with you on a deeper level, knowing that we have a lot more in common. Do you know what I mean? And not being afraid.
I think coming from that working class environment, coming from the ends, gives you that ability. You're able to like maneuver in different parts of society with a lot of ease. And another one of my friends put it in terms of you have a certain wisdom about the world, a certain perspective, because you've had to sort of you've witnessed a lot and you've seen a lot of things happen in different struggles. And he also mentioned that coming from Henry Compton, looking back at his classmates 10 years down the line, they'd come across each other on road and they'd be almost like, I'm proud of you that you've come this far. And we both shared that struggle and we know how difficult it was, but Ra, look what you're doing now and look how well you're doing, etc. So I think that for me made me think a lot about just coming from the ends or coming from sort of working class background or the areas we grew up in, and like you come across people, whether it's 10 years after from school or whatever, and you're like, okay, what's so and so up to? What's my man on? What's da da da? And you're kind of like, wicked man, like you're doing your thing. It's good to see you. It's good to see you doing your thing. So it kind of rang those same bells for me. So that brings me to my question to you, Sulaiman, which is having grown up in Southpaw, what is one way that growing up in Southpaw has shaped the person you are today?
So I would say ultimately we're all products of our environment in one way or another. So our environment fundamentally shapes who we are, whether we like it or not, to be honest. It just has such a major role to play in shaping your character and shaping your identity. And when it comes to Southpaw, a memory that comes to mind when I think of Southpaw is walking up and down Southpaw Broadway with my mum, usually shopping for wedding dresses or shopping for textile material. And one of the things I saw walking up and down the Broadway was businesses run by individuals who came from a similar cultural, ethnic background to myself. And I feel like one way that kind of shaped me is that it gave me the confidence to imagine myself as an entrepreneur. So yeah, I think that sense of entrepreneurialism is definitely something I pick up from Southpaw. Another thing that's worth mentioning is that Southpaw has a very rich history when it comes to anti-racist activism and community mobilization and kind of grassroots protests. So maybe like subconsciously, I had the confidence to kind of create Team Upside because I come from a town, I come from a space where similar grassroots organizations exist. It's even given me the passion for history in a number of ways. And I'm planning to do my dissertation next year on the Southpaw riots in 1979 and the legacy that it had for the South Asian community in London in the 1970s. So yeah, man, growing up in Southpaw was a major factor in shaping my views, my identity, my interests, ultimately. Yeah, so in terms of the theme that I'll be unpacking today, based on our conversation with Omar, it's the theme of luck and opportunity. So during our conversation with Omar, you actually asked him about how he had remained so optimistic as a young man, growing up and facing very difficult challenges in life.
Like, you didn't ask to be the older sibling. You didn't necessarily ask to go Henry Compton and be in that. What was your mindset? Because it could have been very easy to be quite negative or like not want to rise to the challenge, so to speak, of having that responsibility. So what made you so optimistic, and how did you feel like being in the position you were in?
I just thought, you know what? Sometimes you've got to make your own odds. You know, you got to make your own chances. You got to make your own opportunities. If you're gonna wait around, no one's gonna give you chances or opportunities. And I think I saw it as a challenge. So I think like I like being the underdog.
And in response to your question, he replied, "Sometimes you have to make your own odds. You have to make your own chances." I found this really interesting And it made me ask myself, how do you make your own odds? Like, how do you make your own chances, right? And so I did some research, I did some Googling, and I came across a very thought-provoking podcast by Naval Ravikant. He's a famous entrepreneur and a famous angel investor that's invested in Twitter, Uber, a lot of the big companies. And he says that there are 4 types of luck. So number 1, there's blind luck. This is when you get lucky because something completely out of your control happens. Number 2 is luck from hustling. So this is the type of luck you get through perseverance, hard work, putting things into motion. So you're just running around, you're creating opportunities, you're doing a lot of things, you're meeting a lot of people, and just because of all of those interactions, you just generate a lot of energy, and that energy basically pushes you into luck. You kind of fall into it without you really being in control. And then number 3 is luck from preparation. So this is when you become very good at a particular skill, which allows you to spot luck. You become so skilled in a particular field that you will notice a lucky break when other people won't notice it because they don't have the same skills as you and they haven't prepared as much as you. And a simple example that comes to mind is in football. So you've got players like Xavi and Iniesta in the midfield, and they're able to spot opportunities that other players can't because they're not as skilled and prepared as they are. And finally, number 4, this is where you build a unique character, a unique brand, a unique mindset, where essentially luck comes to you. And what I feel like he's trying to argue here is that by creating a unique brand, you essentially become irreplaceable. There's no one else in the market that can do what you do. So whenever there's a demand for a particular service, you're the only person that can deliver that. So luck is going to come to you because of your unique abilities. As you can see, like from number 1 to number 2 to number 3 to number 4, every level of luck gets more difficult, but also the likelihood of achieving and generating luck increases at every level. So I felt like that was a really interesting way to kind of describe that concept. So yeah, with that being said, I wanted to ask you, bro, 2 questions. So I'm being a bit greedy today. Number 1, when was the last time you felt lucky? And number 2, can you think of a time when you created your own luck?
Recently, I had my bike and I needed to get to Stratford International Station. So I thought Uber X meant it was a big Uber, yeah? Turns out Uber X is just a standard Uber, so it can be any size. Obviously, I needed a 7-seater to fit myself on my bike in. It just so happened that the Uber X that I got was driven by a man who was driving 7-seater. So that was strike 1 in terms of in my favor. And then when that person arrived, he was like to me, mate, you need to order a specific type of Uber to allow your bike in. But he happened to be a very nice guy, and he allowed me on that occasion. To answer your second question, I remember not too long ago, I was in this like very fancy place, and a man was a very famous man, he's Lord Levinson, who was in charge of the Levinson inquiry, like the major phone hacking scandal. He was in the same place. And then the person I was with, they pointed him out to me. He's like, oh, you know, that's so-and-so. And so we both kind of left at the same time. I was standing outside speaking with a friend, and then he walked past, and I was like, "Rah, that's thingy." And then I remember saying to myself immediately, "I'm gonna go ask if I can shadow him or something, right?" And the reason that was my mentality at the time is because I wasn't, whatever he said, it wouldn't have made or break. It wouldn't make or break me. I don't hold those kind of things too close to my heart. So I was like, okay, let me just ask him. Whatever he says, it's not a big deal. I ended up not asking him. I didn't anticipate how fast he would walk and how long it would take me to turn around and go after him. And so I suppose that was kind of for me a missed opportunity because he was just right there and I could have just asked him. And it was my first year of uni. So later on, fast forwarding to another fancy event that I was at, there was like another very senior figure in the room, and he was speaking to the whole of the room, right? And as soon as he got up and left, the event was still carrying on. There was still a lot of people, and let's just say you were still supposed to sit in your chair and be like a polite audience member, whatever. But I was like, do you know what, bun this. Probably unconsciously because of that previous encounter, I was like, bro, I'm just gonna go outside and be like, yo, listen, blah, blah, blah. I enjoyed what you said, whatever. So yeah, I remember you was there as well, and another friend of ours was there. I know we just kind of left the room very quickly and we're just kind of speaking to him, and he's very cool. We spoke for a while, and I think with those situations, the way I look at them is nothing can happen in that moment of time. But I think it's the attitude towards them that is healthy. So even, for example, in that second example, we could have kind of got reprimanded by the people that were running it. But for me, I suppose if you weigh up on the scales, I'll happily get reprimanded if that attitude can kind of persist and stay, because who knows what can kind of come from that. But I think it all comes down to not holding those things too close to your heart. Like whatever happens, it's kind of by the by. It's more about the attitude of, do you know what? There's a potential opportunity here. Let me just go for it. And whatever materializes is out of my hands, but I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, you know what this reminds me of? A recent video that Ali Abdal dropped about window knockers versus door knockers. I don't know if you've seen the video. Essentially, he says there are two types of people in life. There are the door knockers and the window knockers. The window knockers will only knock on a window because they can see what they want through the window, whereas the door knockers can't see what's behind the door, but they'll still knock because of the possibility that something worthwhile will be behind that door. And I completely agree with what you were saying. Like, essentially, it was a win-win situation, because even though there was a chance that you'll get reprimanded, I think the least that you would have walked away with is the confidence to do it again. If you do it again, it's like a muscle that you just need to exercise in order to kind of fully have control over.
Yeah, I remember after the person that was there was like, I saw you lot go outside, you know. What should we get doing? But in the end, like, even I say reprimand, it was kind of like just something that was mentioned, but it wasn't even that deep. Do you know what I mean? Things like that, they kind of, it's the spice of life, I think, man. Sometimes you just gotta have to go and do things, innit?
For sure, life's too short, man. I still remember that time you told me that you saw Ed Miliband on the train, bro.
Oh my day, bro. Do you know, it was crazy. Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, it was so crazy. Because the thing is, he was right opposite me in the Piccadilly line, so the distance was very small.
We could have jumped on the Reasons to Be Cheerful podcast.
Yeah, man. But that was Omar's episode, man. Any
final words? I just like to say it was a really enjoyable podcast, man. Like, I feel, for me personally, I don't know about you, Saadadeen, but he's someone that I look up to a lot, because he's a few years older than me, like probably like 10, 15 years older than me. And I feel like he's accomplished a lot in life that I would love to accomplish. You know what I mean? Like, the kind of the impact that he's had on his community is really inspiring. So it was lovely to be in a room with him and just to kind of have such a chilled out conversation. It wasn't hierarchical. It was very relaxed and enjoyable. What about you?
Yeah, 100%. I think it is important to see people that come from that kind of background and see the trajectory of their career and like so many things he's doing and has done, and still has that like optimistic energy of like, yeah, there's still so many things I want to do and can do. I think those kind of things are very inspiring. So yeah, man, I really enjoyed it.
That is it for this week. To keep in touch, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. That's afterwork_UK on Instagram and Twitter, and Afterwork Podcast everywhere else.
If you took even one thing away from this episode, give us a review on Apple Podcasts and comment on our YouTube video. Any thoughts or suggestions for future episodes, DM us on our socials or shoot us an email at afterwork258@gmail.com. In any case, see you same time, same place next week.